Hey everyone, it's Tim from Linessa Farms, Specialty and Heirloom Livestock. Thanks for joining us again today. So do you have areas like this on your property that are overgrown with trees, brush, stickers, briars, poison ivy, things like that? I don't know about you, but this is a serious problem on our property and I'm getting tired of trying to clean it out myself. So we're gonna put our goats to work today to get this cleaned out, and I wanna talk to you about it. Let's get started. All right, so here we are today. This is one of the many tree lines on Linessa Farms. This is full of poison ivy, briars, we have hedge apple, we have all kinds of low-lying shrubs and grasses and things like that, and I need to get this cleaned up. Well, I don't know if you checked gas prices lately, but gas prices are outrageous. We already have some goats on our property, so we're gonna put our goats to work to get this cleaned out for us. What other advantages do I have? Well, I don't have to make any noise because I'm not gonna be running any power equipment. It's going to be naturally pruned. They're going to leave fertilizer behind after they're done cleaning it up. I don't have to worry about getting poison ivy or anything on me. It's free food for them. It's very nutritious, full of things like tannins and things that help naturally prevent worm loads, and there's just lots and lots of overall benefits. Now this is something you can do easily on your property, or you can have someone else come maybe and say, hey, you know, I've got some area on my property that needs to be cleaned out, and you can actually make a little business out of this. Today what we're going to do is we're going to show you how to set up portable temporary fencing on a fence charger, 2 strands of portable fencing, get all this set up, get a couple animals in here and get going. So a lot of people ask, why goats? Why not sheep? Well, goats are our #1 animal that we want to try to use first. Then we would go to hair sheep, and from there we would go to wool sheep. You know, goats are a great idea for this kind of an operation for multiple reasons. One, they tend to eat darn near everything that they can get their mouths around. And the other thing that we really like about the goats is the goats will stand up on hind legs and actually reach for the high branches and clear them off where the sheep won't. So those are the 2 major benefits, is that they'll stand on their hind legs, then they tend to eat everything instead of being real picky and choosy about things like the sheep are. Now, you can use hair sheep. I don't want to tell you that you can't use sheep. You can use hair sheep, but I want you to keep in mind that you're not going to get nearly as good of outcome with the hair sheep. And as far as wool sheep are concerned, I want you to try to stay away from the wool sheep altogether. If you had to use wool sheep to do this, you could possibly use freshly shorn wool sheep, but the problem is a lot of these small branches, stickers, briars, things like that are actually going to get embedded into their wool, and over time it's going to cause, it's just going to get in there, it's going to get buried, and then it's going to ruin the wool. So when you finally do go to shear, you're going to have a heck of a time. So again, we want to start off with the goats, then go to the hair sheep, and then go to the wool sheep as a last resort. You can use any of them, but goats are most definitely the best. With that being said, let's talk about the supplies that we're going to need to get this started today. So let's talk about the equipment that you're going to need in order to get this done. Now this is bare bones what you're absolutely going to have, but you can get more equipment as needed. You're going to have a weed whacker. It's going to come in handy. If you don't have a weed whacker, you're going to have to use some kind of a scythe. And of course, anytime we're operating the power equipment, we want to make sure that we have our safety glasses to protect ourselves and that we're wearing toed shoes. Don't go out and do this in your flip-flops. The other things that you're going to need, you're going to need a water source for your animals. Now, as we get further along, we're going to talk about the number of animals. We're actually only going to have 2 animals in this pen at a time to start off with, so this will more than suffice for what they need. We're going to need 4 T-posts. The T-posts need to be at least 3.5 foot tall. We're going to have 4 2-inch PVCs to go over our T-posts. So 4 T-posts, 4 of the PVC 2-inch pieces that are 4 foot long. A dead blow hammer. This is a rubber mallet or a hard plastic mallet, and it's a dead blow hammer. A pair of diagonal cutters. Right here we have some zip ties, just multi-purpose zip ties. These should be at least 6 inches long. A T-post driver, a pair of loppers to cut off any kind of hard, heavy branches that we may run into contact with as we're putting up the fence. And then last but not least, our netting. Now, I know we use a lot of Premier netting out on our pastures. For this specific application, I like to use Kencove netting. Again, we do not take money from anyone. This is just what we use. If you go to the links below, you'll find this. I really like the Kencove netting because it It blends in very, very well with its surroundings to where you can barely even see it from maybe 20 feet away. The other thing that I like about it is it's extremely lightweight. It's extremely durable. It has nice step-in stakes, and it's relatively cost effective. Each roll is 164 feet, and it's going to cost you at or around $200 per roll, which is really cost effective when compared to the Premier One netting. I actually want to pick out my site and start talking about that with you, and we're going to go through this step by step as we set it up. So a couple questions that we get asked, and I don't want to get too far in the video before I address these. The number one thing that I get asked is people say, why can't I just put my goat on a dog lead with a collar? And the answer to that is it's just not going to work. There's so much small, nasty stuff that they can get wrapped up in. It's not safe for them. They can choke themselves. And the other thing is we always want them to be with a buddy. Goats do not do well by themselves. The only way you can put goats on a tie out is to have two goats tied together so they can only meet at the very ends of their tie out so they don't get wrapped up amongst one another, and it's just not healthy for them, and it's something that's not really feasible when we're looking at a wooded location like this. The other thing is we use a fence charger that's either going to be electrified with a 110 volt outlet. That means you're going to plug it into the wall or plug it into an outlet, or we're going to use a deep cycle battery charger that runs off of that deep cycle battery like we do our rotational grazing out on pasture. And the reason for that is, I don't know if you've ever been in a woods before, but you may have noticed there's no sunlight. And so we're not fans of the solar chargers as it is. I think it's an extremely high amount of money to spend for the actual joules, the actual output that you're going to get. The deep cycle batteries just work way, way better. As far as cost is concerned, I think you come out just as good, if not further ahead by the deep cycle batteries as opposed to solar. But again, if you're gonna be in a shaded, wooded area, obviously a solar fence charger isn't going to work too good for you. So again, deep cycle battery or plug in to the wall. So this is our Speedright 3000. You can get this through Premier. You can also get this online. This runs on a deep cycle battery. It comes with everything that you need. And we just keep ours in a Tupperware container. You can see we've also got all of our tools and everything else in here. That way when we're doing work out here, it's just here. A couple different settings that you can set the Speedright on. That will come with your owner's manual. Basically, you can set it to fast, you can set it to slow, you can set it just to regular charge. And again, it just hooks up and runs right off of a deep cycle battery. So it's as simple as one lead hooks up to your positive, one lead hooks up to your negative. You still need to drive a ground rod. The positive comes off and attaches right to my fence. I like to just gator clip it right to that union that we talked about earlier. And then I drive a ground rod and I just hook my ground right up to that. As you can see, I just keep my ground rod driver right on top of it when I'm not using it. It keeps it up and out of the dirt. Little pricey to get this, and then you're gonna have the cost of the batteries and the cost of the charger. But I feel that this is worth it. We've had these batteries, as long as you use a really nice trickle charger for your deep cycle batteries, they will last you for years and years. Now, you absolutely must use a deep cycle battery. These batteries are made to be charged and drained and charged and drained. You can't use a regular battery. It won't work. Over time, it'll just burn it up. So again, the link for this is going to be in the description below. You can get it through Premier, but you can get it through other companies as well. We've talked about our fence charger in the past, or our fence tester in the past. This is the one that we prefer, and it just shows us where we're at. The other thing to keep in mind with the Speedright charger is the amount of joules that it puts out. A solar powered charger just will not work appropriately for these fences and for the amount of fencing that we have. It puts out a lot of volts on paper, but at the end of the day, the joules just aren't there. So that amount of force that it's pushing through the fence just isn't there. We have a tremendous weed load on this fence right now. And if you look here and see, we're gonna be at about 2.9 thousand volts. And we're at 2.7. So earlier this morning we were at 2.9, but this is still more than enough to give them a good shock if they touch it and to keep them away from it. So again, overall, I think the Speedright is definitely the way to go. If you have any questions or concerns regarding that, just let me know and I'll do my best to answer them. So let's get started with picking out our site. So when I go to pick out my site, basically what I want to do is I want to determine where one of my corners is going to be, and I'm going to drive a stake there. So I'm going to grab my T-post driver and a T-post, and I am going to drive my first stake. So this is where I'm gonna put my first post. Obviously, I have to say this, make sure that you're not driving your T-posts anywhere where there's gonna be like electrical, plumbing, or anything like that. So I am on one of the corners of the rectangle that I'm going to make. I have a straight line of sight this way. I have a straight line of sight this way. I know that this is where I'm gonna place my first T-post, so I'm gonna go ahead and drive it down. Hearing protection may be advantageous for you if you're going to use this because it can get a little loud. So with that being said, I'm gonna drive my T-post just until my winglets are all the way into the ground. Okay, my winglets are just in the ground. So at this time, I'm gonna take my PVC, 2-inch PVC pipe, and I'm gonna place it, and that is my first T-post. So with that being said, the next thing I'm gonna do is drive my second corner on this end of my rectangle, which will be over this way. So I'm gonna grab my T-post and head that way. All right, so I have my second post that I'm going to set. I can see my first post up and over that way. This is my second post in my rectangle, and I'm going to go ahead and set this one now as well. This is pretty easy. If you look down, you can see I actually have a cornfield that I'm gonna follow. So this allows me a little bit of an easier time following a line of sight that kind of shows me where I'm going to go. So I have the cornfield on one side of the tree line, a yard on the other side of the tree line, and I'm gonna guess that the tree line itself is probably, I'm gonna guess it's about 30 foot wide. Again, I'm just gonna drive this down until the wings are in the ground. And that's it. I'm gonna take my 4-foot piece of 2-inch PVC, slide it down over the top, and I'm done. And you may notice in this picture that the actual post ends right here and the PVC is up and over the top, and that's perfectly fine. There's more than enough rigidity in this piece of PVC that it's gonna allow me to pull a straight line in the direction that I need to go. Now, it may seem like that I would want to drive my 4 T-posts, my 4 corners, before I pull out any fencing, and that's the wrong idea. I only want to drive my first 2 corners, and the reason for that is that I don't want to waste any fencing, and I want to make sure that I don't put my fence posts too far away. I don't want to bring them up too close. I want to get them just right with a little bit of overlap. And with that being said, the next thing I'm going to do is start to unroll my fencing and actually walk it off. Now I can see that there's some shrubbery that's going to be in the way of me pulling this fence. So the first thing I'm going to do is go through and cut that down to create enough room for me to get this fence through there. And then we'll kind of get back on track talking about why I'm setting it up this way. So as I cut down this brush of this linden tree, I'm actually just going to toss it inside where the animals are going to eat it. There's no reason for me to cut any more than necessary, and there's no reason for me to take this brush out because I obviously want them to eat it. So as you can see, I've cut down some of the branches, and now I have a perfectly clean line of sight. This looks to be the only tree that's going to be in the way. I've got my one post down there. I'm going to have my other post down there. But again, first, now that I have all my obstacles out of the way, I'm actually going to lay out my fence to make sure that I have just the right amount. All right, so I've laid out my fencing. I actually have 164 feet of fencing that is laid out right now. Laying it out first and kind of eyeballing it is a much better way to do this instead of trying to unroll it as you go. If there's times you're not gonna be able to do this, but trust me, this helps out immensely. So the next thing you need to do is find the corner where you want your gate to be. So I'm gonna go to the corner where my opening is going to be, and that's where I'm going to start putting up my fence. Ready? All right, so I know it's kind of hard to follow when we're out there, so I just wanted to kind of show you what we're talking about. In the video, I've got my yard right here. I've got my cornfield back here. So I have the cornfield. This is my yard. And this is my tree line right in here. This is all trees and shrub and briars and everything else. So I have a path that goes through this way, and then the field runs down here, and I've carved a path that goes down this way. Now with this being my yard, my barn, you actually can't see it, but my barn is up here. I want my gate, my entrance to be right here. And so my first post is gonna be right there, and I'm gonna pull my slack all the way around and go back to the entrance. So I'm gonna start to pull this way, then this way. And again, when we get to this end, so this is where my first strand starts. My first strand starts here, goes around this post and down to the end. Now, when that looks like it's going to end, I'm gonna wanna come back about 10 foot and have that 10-foot tail that's gonna go around this post and stop right about there. This is my insurance policy that allows me to make sure that I'm gonna have at least 10 extra foot to 15 extra foot down on this end. You don't wanna pull all this fencing and then get to the end and realize that you're short. I'll connect my second line here, pull around this T-post, pull tight back to my entrance, and then any extra I have, I can pull up and around that corner. The other beauty is I can undo this extra and I can actually make a little corral down here at the end where I can run my animals in and I can medicate them or do whatever, or if I want to load them in and out in this area, I can do that. I always leave some extra little tail in order to have some extra use here. I just place my water over the fence with my mineral over the fence. In this case, it's right about in that location. You can put it wherever you want it. And as I said during the video, I actually have an electric fence that's already in place here that I can simply tie a jumper in to tie the power in to get this whole thing powered. But it's just that easy. I just wanted to give you an example on the whiteboard so it's a little bit easier for you to see and understand. All right, so this is the corner where I want my gate to be. That is to say that this is where I'm gonna want my opening to be, and chances are I'm gonna end up with a little bit extra fencing here when I'm done. So this is my first corner, my second corner is behind me, and then the rectangle is gonna run that way. So I'm gonna place my post all the way up against this fence, and I am going to step it in. If you can't step it in, be gentle with these. They're kind of flimsy, but it will eventually go in. If you can't get it to go in, then it's as simple as using your dead blow hammer. Next thing that I'll do is take one of my zip ties, and I'm just gonna zip tie this post to this post. And I may need to use double zip ties in this case. If your zip ties aren't quite long enough, just double them up. And again, I'm not zip tying wire, I'm zip tying the fiberglass post. And I just zip tie that up tight, and it's just that easy. And I'm gonna do another one in the middle right here, just for good favor. Again, I just wanna zip tie the post, not the actual wire. I'm actually gonna pull the wire out so it doesn't get tied up. There. Nice and sturdy, and it's gonna hold a lot of tension. So now I'm gonna go to my next corner and I'm gonna pull this slack out and about. Now you'll notice that there are some branches that are in this fencing right now, and that is okay. I will actually come through and pull these out later, or cut these out later to help clean it up. So I'm just gonna find my next post, which in this case is right here. What I like to do in as straight a line as possible is I wanna take my foot and pull just a little bit of tension in this, get it where I need it to be, and then step it in. And again, nice and easy. Nice and easy, step it in, try to keep it as straight as I can, and there's that. Now I move on to my next one, and again, I'm gonna do the same thing. Caught up on a little tree branch there, that's okay. Again, I'm taking my foot, pull a little bit of tension on this, get it as lined up as I can, and then just step it in. And don't worry too much about this vegetation. The animals will come through and eat it up without any issues. Now you can see the beauty of having my other corner here. It would be totally difficult in order to get this as tight as I want it to be without having these T-posts with this PVC on. Now I can really pull some tension on this. And here's the other interesting thing. Look at that fence there behind me. Look at how saggy that is. Now watch, when I pull my tension here on this one, look at how it tightens that up real nice. And so that's the main thing. Keep as straight of a line as possible. Pull a little bit of tension with your foot, not a lot, just a little, just to get it snug, and then slowly and evenly step it in. And now I'm just gonna continue my way all the way down the fence row. I am not going to go all the way to the end. If you look here, you'll see I actually have one section left, and I don't want to go all the way to the end. And the reason for that is I want to make sure that I have a little bit extra fencing left when I get back to my original post. So this is going to be post number 3. I did 1, 2, 3, and we're going to go to 4 that way. This is where I'm going to have to get the old weed whacker out and make a path. But this is where I actually want to place my next post, is right inside here. So I'm gonna go ahead and drive that. So I'm gonna do one post from the end, and then I'm gonna zip tie it here as well. So I'm going to go ahead and drive this. Gonna be extra careful to make sure I don't hit this. This is where you can have a buddy that can come in if you're not doing this by yourself. And that's more than enough. Again, I'm gonna slip my insulator over this, just like that. Grab me a couple zip ties. Zip tie this buddy up. It's about 6 o'clock in the evening here in Indiana. We like to do this during the evening. It's still pretty hot. It's still in the 90s right now. But I'll tell you, during the day, wow, this is just grueling. The other thing you'll find is when you're in these woods, you're gonna have ticks, you're gonna have mosquitoes, all kinds of nasty critters. So I'm just gonna pull this tight here. And again, I'll put another one down here in the middle. I don't ever zip tie on the ground end because there's no real reason to do it since you have your double step-in spike. And again, I'm just gonna wrap around the post, not around the wire. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm gonna get my weed whacker out and I'm gonna do as straight of a line as I can. Now, it looks like I've got a tree right in my line of sight, but it looks like if I have my camera lady go around and look for me, let's go ahead and step around over there, Tessa. So I'm gonna wanna angle back towards my original point, not away from it. And the reason for that is I don't want to eat up all my extra fence by going this way. You know, a little bit angle away can eat up a lot of your fence, so always angle in if you need to. I've got a tree right in front of me. I can see daylight through here, so I'm just going to get my loppers, get my weed whacker, and I'm going to get this cleaned up right here. So we're at the end and I've got about 15 foot of extra fence left over, and that's okay. This is where my opening is. So what I'm gonna do in this case is I'm gonna take this extra and I'm just gonna wrap it around that PVC post and I'm gonna double up the fence where it's at. This is gonna be my opening where I can get my animals in. This can also come in handy if you need to build a mini corral. If you need to treat them or do anything with them, you can actually make a circle out of this and you can actually run them into this area, and it will help you. It'll give you a little bit of extra leeway to maybe contain them in an area where you'll be able to do, give them worming medication, take a look at them or whatever, load them onto a trailer. That's often what we do. We leave a tail like this on our electric fencing, on our netting, so we can make a little circle to corral everyone into. It makes your life a whole lot easier. In this case, all I'm gonna do is just kind of bunch up my fencing. That way it's all together. So when I walk it around the corner, I lay it out like this, go point to point, pick this up, go point to point, and now I'm just gonna walk it around my corner, pull it tight, and in places like this. So I've got my slack. I've pulled my slack up and around the fence. I've got it kind of doubled up on the fence there. I've got some of these loose ends. I'm just simply gonna clip this around, clip it to the fence itself, just to create continuity. Now, in this case, I'm gonna be able to cheat a little bit. And the reason for that is I've got 10,000 volt hot fence right here. So what I'm gonna be able to do is I'm gonna be able to actually create a lead and go from this fence to this fence. But again, this is already powered. If it wasn't powered, then I would just go ahead and utilize my deep cycle battery charger. But the thing is, if you come along and look here, I think you're gonna find, and if my camera lady kind of stands back at an angle here and looks at the fence, this is where this Kencove fence really comes in handy. You know, we're in my backyard looking into this tree line, and you can see just how well this fence actually blends in to the environment and how nice it looks. It doesn't really stand out very much at all. And to be honest, you know, if you weren't right on top of it, you wouldn't even really be able to see it. So now the last thing that I want to do is I want to go through and I want to find any areas along the fence where I've got branches and things touching it, and just do a quick once around, make sure that there's no large branches touching it, make sure that I got everything cleaned up, make sure that everything is in the ground the way that it needs to be, and go from there. Okay, little things like this, this is one of those things where it's like, you know, is this really gonna make that big of a difference? And the answer is anything that's touching this fence, any little thing that's touching this fence can actually, it's gonna drain a little bit of voltage off of it. So especially when these leaves get wet, like during a storm or they get weighed down, I like to keep them out of here. Ooh, this is hawthorn. This is nasty stuff. This is hawthorn for those of you that are not from an area that has it. Look at that bad boy. That'll ruin your day. This stuff will go right through the bottom of a boot. And believe it or not, the goats will just eat this stuff up. We get a lot of questions from people about poison. Is there anything in here that's poisonous? No, not really. We do have some cherry trees in here. Cherry trees are known for releasing arsenic. You don't have to worry about them eating the leaves off the tree fresh. What'll happen with cherry is if a bough breaks, lands on the ground, and the leaves are still on and those leaves start to decompose, that's when they will release arsenic, and that's when you'll have an issue. But as far as them eating them fresh off the tree, no worries whatsoever. Or completely dead on the ground, not an issue either. So again, just these little ones, I'm just going through and picking these off. So next thing I want to talk about is how am I going to take care of these animals when they're in here? Now you can see there's quite a bit of grass in here already, and that's cool, and this should be more than enough to sustain them. However, what I want you to do, and this is where some people are going to lose their minds, is I want you to put at least 2 fistfuls, well, I'm going to say 1 fistful of hay in there per day. That's as much hay as you can grab, good quality hay you can grab in your hand, and I want you to drop it in there next to their water. And the reason for that is you may end up in a forest, like a deciduous forest, where you don't hardly have any grass in there at all, and it's all just like dead leaves, things like that. And that grass, that roughage in the form of grass, is really, really going to help them to keep their rumen cooking. And what will happen is over time, after they eat this down, it'll allow these natural grasses to grow up a little bit more. And you can see in here I've got a lot of grass, and that's because I've done this before in the past. But the first time it may not be so great. So I want a fistful of hay per animal per day. Now, I'm only going to put 2 goats in here. And you may say, oh my gosh, why would you only put 2 goats in there? And the reason for that is that I don't want to be moving these dudes in like a couple days. I want to be moving these dudes in a couple weeks. If I was doing this for a job, let's say I was hired out to do this, then you can put as many in here as you want. If you want to get it done lickety split, then that's cool. You can put as many in here as you want. For me personally, I'm going to put 2 wethers in here and I'm going to let them go. Wethers are the best that you can put in. A dehorned wether and a buddy dehorned wether are the best you can put in here. They're not going to lose their minds when a female goes into heat. They're not going to want to escape. Females would be the next best option, and lastly would be bucks or intact males to put in here. I'm not a fan of intact males because this fence isn't necessarily going to stop them. The other question that I get asked is, why do you use this kind of fence? Why don't you just use single strand? And the reason is I'm trying to keep predators out as well as my animals in, and this allows me to keep my predators out fairly well, a lot better than a single hot wire. Now, if you've got guardian dogs and you want to put those dogs in there with them, by all means, go ahead and do that. And then you may be able to get away with doing this with single strand, but I think the electrode netting is always the best option. And really, it's not that hard to put up if you do it with a buddy. So again, I'm just doing this. Now, every once in a while, you'll get a little bit of sagginess here, and that's normal. An easy way to correct the sagginess is to actually grab the fence, pull it up, and wrap it around itself just like that. See how I just grab it and wrap it up around itself? And that'll pull a little bit of slack out of that fence and help it to stay a little tighter. But overall, it stays pretty tight. A little bit of weed load isn't going to bother things. This is fantastic, especially during the hot summer months, because there's plenty of shade in here for these animals to get into. They're going to be shaded. They're going to stay cool during the day. Their water is going to last a little bit longer, and they're going to be a whole lot happier. Again, the T-posts with this PVC, oh my goodness, this is the way you got to go. Like, this is the only way to do it. You can pull that fence so much neater. It definitely goes a long way. So with that being said, let me check my notes here. and see if we covered everything. All right, supplies you need, we talked about that. We talked about trimming, we talked about goats, and like I said, 2 goats, wethers are best. Feeding them, yes, so you also want some free choice mineral. If you're doing males, you're definitely gonna wanna go to foundationfeed.com. That's our feed store, www.foundationfeed.com. And you're gonna wanna check out free choice mineral that is phosphorus free, because remember, that phosphorus is what gives you those urinary calculi. So you're gonna definitely wanna watch on that. Now, here's the last thing that I wanna talk about. If you're gonna do this as a business, there's a few things that I want you to keep in mind if you're gonna do this as a business. First and foremost, you need to tag and ID all of your animals. Ideally, tattoo them, because an individual can't come and just cut a tattoo off like they can a tag. Now, the reality is if they're gonna steal your animals, they're gonna steal your animals. If you're doing this as a business, people have a tendency to get really excited and they wanna share this with friends and share it online. Don't make the mistake of saying where your animals are going to be. If you wanna talk about a job that you did and a clear out job that you did and how well it worked out, talk about it after the fact. Some of these animals are going to be in remote locations. You don't want to tell and broadcast to the world where the animals are going to be, because you're inviting people to come and steal them. So that's definitely something that you want to keep in mind. The other thing you want to do is you want to talk to the landowners, and you want to talk to them about not feeding your animals. Don't throw things over the fence to these animals. Don't throw yard clippings over the fence. Don't throw garden scraps. The other thing that you want to watch for in the fall is fallen fruit that's fallen on the ground, like apples and things like that. If they're dead and they're on the ground and the animals are eating them off the ground, it can open them up to getting all kinds of things like botulism, and you don't want to deal with that either. Insurance, I think it's always a good idea to have insurance on your animals just in case they get loose. You're going to have to check on them every day. You're going to have to give them fresh water every day. You have to lay eyes on your animals each and every day. If you're going to charge individuals for the service, charge them by the day. Just tell them, this is my fee that you are going to pay per day. And at any point they can say, it's cleaned out enough, I want them gone. And at that point you go in and you take them. Let the customer tell you. You can give them an estimate and say, this much area is going to take me X number of days on average. Give them a price per day. And then when they tell you it's time to pull them, you just go in and you pull them. It's just that easy. Obviously, if they eat it down so much that they don't have anything left to eat, you're going to want to pull them again as well. Now, we're going to do some time-lapse footage on this as the animals eat it down. We'll keep you posted. If you want to see how this goes down and how it works, go to our Facebook page, go to Linessa Farms on Facebook, or better yet, go to Linessa Farms Tack box on Facebook. This is our online forum and group where you can go to get all kinds of information. Feel free to hop on there, get that information, ask questions, share information. If you have animals for sale, it's a good place for you to post them. If you're in need of some animals, it's a good place to post them as well. It's a good place to meet people from all over the world and talk with them. So check out Linessa Farms Tack Box. We'll show you the progress of how this goes. So the last thing that I have to do is just place a jumper between my hot fence and my portable fencing. I'm just going to use a lead with gator clips and go from one to the other. We do have a video of me getting shocked during this video making process. I got 10,000 volts along my back. I think I peed a little bit. I'm not 100% sure, but it wasn't pleasant, I can tell you that. But yeah, it's just that easy. So we will keep you posted. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please let us know. With that being said, I'm Tim from Linessa Farms Specialty and Heirloom Livestock. Thanks for joining me again today, and I look forward to seeing you again next time.